So we're going to create our first simulation here. So let's go ahead and select this cube here, and I'm going to press S like Sam or scale and the number 2 on my keyboard, and then press enter. This is going to be our domain, which is sort of like a holder for our fire and smoke. And let's go ahead and go to wireframe for a moment just so we could see inside of it. And I'm just going to hit S to scale and Z and just kind of scale it up a little bit. And I'm just going to create a let's rename this cube domain. And then what I'm going to create inside of it is the actual object that's going to have fire on it. So I'm going to hit S and A, and I'm going to go to mesh, and I'm going to go ahead and just select the sphere for now. You could play with the monkey. It's really whatever you want, or if you have a 3D model that you want. And let's go ahead and select our domain here and hit G as in George and Z and just move this up. You can also just grab your move tool. And what I'm trying to do is just position this at the bottom. Now this could be a lot taller, right? Like I can do something like this. It's just I want it for when it touches the top here. The smoke is going to emit from here. It's going to touch the top. So just depends on how far you want your simulation to go. Right, so over here with our domain selected, go down here to this little circle, and with the dot in it, it's our physics tab. And let's add a fluid simulation to the domain. And then we want to make sure that we select domain. And again, what a domain is it's the cage in which our simulation exists in. If we didn't have a cage, our computer wouldn't be able to render it because it would just be in this infinite space. So inside of here, you can leave it as gas. Later, we're going to get into creating like blood and liquid and all this other stuff. Now let's adjust the number of frames that we want to render. So go down to the bottom till you find cache. And the end frame, we'll just do like 150 here. And for the replay type here, modular and replay, I do all. It just gives me the best results and is resumable. Now, the reason why we check is resumable is when we're baking this out, like you click this bake all button, we can stop halfway through it and it'll still keep the render. Now, you might want to keep at first your resolution divisions at 32. If you have a really, if your computer is not that strong, you can even go to 16. Mine's pretty powerful, so I'm going to set it to 128. Now, what you'll notice is down at the bottom, this little sphere changed in size. So let me go back to 32 so you can see it. This is called a voxel, and this is the type or the size of our simulation. So the smaller the voxel, the more detailed our render will be. And I'm going to actually do a lecture before this if you're in class with me, and I'll show you the difference with imagery on what the difference between the different voxel sizes. Now, what we'll do is we'll adjust the size of this domain box as the smoke goes. Instead of having it go in there, you can try it without it, but that's this adaptive domain. If we check it on, this box will scale up with the smoke. If we leave it off, you'll see the smoke build inside of it. So I'll just turn it on for now, and that'll give us a little bit more shape with our smoke and our fire, or it'll adjust that way. All right, now in your gas panel, under the, let's see, there's our gas panel. Now, let's try to find our fire section here. Now the reaction speed time, it controls the height of the flame. So the higher the values actually equal the lower the flame. So I'm going to set this to 0.5. And then lower the values equals taller the flames. So this is pretty good. 0.5, 1, and 0.5 here for reaction speed, flame smoke, and veracity. Now the veracity is, if we take this up to like a 0.6 or 0.7, we're going to get crazy fire. For now, just leave it around 0.5 or 0.6. And also, actually, if you really crank this up, you'll get like nice swirls in your flames. That's the veracity. Now let's set up our flow object. This is the object where the fire comes out of it. So go ahead and hit fluid and change its type to flow, because that's what's going to flow out of it. And then we're going to change smoke to fire here. Now the flow behavior is currently set to geometry. We want to do inflow. Inflow is going to give us constant fire going, whereas geometry would just do one big puff. Now let's increase our flow source section here. And for surface emission here, it's currently set to 1.5. This means that the fire will emit slightly away from the mesh surface. I'd rather have it closer to the mesh, like right on top. So I'm going to just set this value to 1 here. So with all that set up, let's go ahead and select our domain here. And right now you don't see anything happening, but what we need to do is we need to click on bake domain. So look for this bake all button. Now here's the thing, we set it to 150. We can change our end frame here to 150, and this couldn't take a while. So like I'm gonna hit bake all and just pause the video. Some of you, like, remember what I told you before, you might want to set this value to 32 so that it bakes a lot quicker. Yeah, so I'm gonna go ahead and hit bake all. So let's go ahead and scrub through this, and you can see as the fire goes up and the fire and smoke goes up, you can see that it's touching the top here. And so our because we turned on that adaptive domain, that's why the domain is changing. If you don't see it changing and it just sticks within there, that's the reason why. Now, if I hit render right now, let's go ahead and just sort of look through our camera. So I'm going to hit the tilde key. That's the key to the left of the number 1. I'm going to select view camera. Another way of doing this is just to click this camera here. I'd like to frame my entire shot. So I'm going to press N like Nancy to open this up and go to view and do camera to view and just scroll out a little bit and just try to get this whole object in here. Now, with your domain selected, if I go ahead and press F12 now to render it, you can see that we see this box here. Now I'm going to show you something. There's actually, it looks like there's a bug in 4.0, and it's not a huge bug. I'm going to show you how to fix it. But one of the reasons we can't see this is we need to set up a material on our domain. So go ahead and select your material here. And then what I want you to do is scroll to Principled BDSF, click this little dot, and then hit remove. And I had to scroll up to do that. And then look for Principled volume. Now, by default, when I go to render here, let's go to layout again. Sorry, if I press F12 or I go to render image, this should be gone, but it's not. And the reason for that is that bug I was talking about. So on the little timeline section here, click on that and go to shader editor. And if you zoom in here, you'll notice volume is plugged into surface. I'm going to uncheck that. It should be plugged into volume. And now when I bring this down and I go to render this, you can see now I can render my image. Now you're not seeing the fire, so we kind of have to set that up as well. And so you'll notice here that we have this color attribute. So I'm just going to, with this material selected, I'm going to go here to materials or material down here. Let's see. And we need to apply this material that we just created to this object. So open this volume thing. Make sure that you have principled volume in here. And it's interesting. It says temperature attribute here, but it didn't update it here. See, and this material is called material, and we've got that on there. So let's adjust our smoke here. Go to color here. Go with a little bit of a darker gray. And let me make sure, yeah, we have the same material here. All right, so I think I know what the issue is. So under density here, if you want more dense smoke, I'm going to go ahead and set mine to like 10 here. And I'm going to hit F12. You can see that we have denser, thicker smoke here. Now, in order to get fire, or to get our fire to appear in our scene, we need to turn on black body intensity. That's this right here. And so it's like the higher the number, the brighter the flames will appear. So I'm gonna hit F12 now. You can see now we have this fire going on. We're gonna take a look at making it less pixelated as well. Something else I want to do is if I render it now, you see I have this gray background. It makes it easier for me to make it just a pure black, and also so that I can, if we end up doing something where you need to filter it out for like a animation, it's good to have your background set to black here. All right, so let's work on sharpening up that render. So let's go to our render panel here, and you can see my render is only set to 64. You really need to set this to a number that is going to render fast enough. So I'm going to hit F12 here, and you can see we're getting a lot better results here. And to add a bit of glow, I'm going to turn on bloom. So when you check that on, and actually let's go ahead and click this on here, and you'll be able to see it sort of update. See how I'm clicking bloom here? And it's pretty pixelated, and we'll get to that in a second. So under volumetrics here, I'm going to change it from 8 pixels to 2 pixels. And you can see right off the bat that sharpened it. Now, if your particular render is you're like losing the smoke, you can turn your distribution up to 1. You could see how that kind of pushed it a little bit more here. And we'd have 12 here. You can see that right off the bat, we're starting to get a lot cleaner and with the smoke here. Let's see what else. And actually something else is I like to turn on volumetric shadows, and that adds shadows to your smoke. And then under color management here, I'm going to turn the look from none to maybe high contrast. You could see that builds out a little bit higher of a contrast here. So now you can see it took me a little bit longer for my render time, but I'm getting pretty beautiful results here. All right, so let's take a look at how I want you to render this for your homework. So go to output here and then select an area. I'm just going to throw mine on the, well, I'll go to documents. I think I have a folder in here. Guess I don't. I'm going to make a folder called fire. And I'm going to accept, just for a name here, I'm just going to type in fire. And I'll leave fire extension on because that's going to give me a, it'll add the extension to that. And then I want to do FMPEG here. And then under encoding, under Matroska, I'm going to select MPEG 4. And let's see. The end frame is 150. And then let's look at our timeline. And you should be able to scrub through this pretty well to kind of see how it looks. So something like this. We play through it. It doesn't look too bad. It's kind of like a little explosion before it lights up. All right, but now that we have our folder set up and we have all of this, I'm going to go to render and I'm going to hit render animation. Now, mind you, again, I'm doing this in EV at 128. If it's taking forever, or just sometimes you got to render your stuff overnight. Yeah, I mean, it's just kind of a reality behind it. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and hit render, and then I'm going to render my animation. And I'm going to pause the video and we'll take a look at it together. All right, so let's take a look at the final result. I'm going to go ahead and press play. You can see we've got pretty cool and convincing fire. And what's nice is if you animate the ball moving, the fire will have a trail that goes with it. That's it.